Hey everybody, welcome to another podcast episode from the Golden Cabinet. I am so happy to be here today with Kirsten Karchmer, and I will get to her decorated CV in just a moment and introduce her. But if you haven't been here before or you're viewing this somewhere, we've got it's a new podcast that is primarily for acupuncturists and helping them grow their practice. So we've got a YouTube channel, so subscribe there, Facebook page, and thegoldencabinet.ca is the main website. I don't know where you're watching this. So without further ado, we're here with Kirsten Karchmer. Welcome.
Hi.
Hey. Okay, because of what you sent in, like I just said, I'm going to just read it because Kirsten, we talked a couple days ago, and I felt really bad after because A, I had to go quickly, and B,
you just cut me right off.
I am so sorry. I was like, I had to go pick up a sick child from school, and I also was like, this is all such gold. Let's just have this energy in the podcast or record it. So anyway, I apologize, Kirsten, but Here we go. Kirsten Karchmer is a health tech pioneer and women's health expert. She has pioneered proprietary infertility assessment and treatment protocols that optimize fertility while improving patients' overall health. She's a board-certified reproductive acupuncturist and former president of the American Board of Oriental Reproductive Medicine. She is also the CEO and founder of Conceivable, a technology-enabled fertility solution at 1/100 of the cost of IVF. And VIV Wellness, VIV Wellness, is that right?
Viv
Wellness, women's health revolution committed to eradicating PMS and cramping, which is awesome. I'm excited to chat about that too. In 2013, Kirsten translated her successful clinical programs into her technology-enabled platform that uses machine learning AI to provide affordable and impactful reproductive solutions. Karchmer was named one of the Texas Women in Technology to Watch, and Conceivable, which we'll get into, your technology, was named one of the most innovative health tech startups from MedTech in 2015. That's so awesome, Kirsten. Best fertility app by Healthline, in 2016, and has been featured in Fox News, the New York Magazine, TechCrunch, HuffPost, and mHealth. I'm blown away. I'm so excited for you. She lectures internationally on women's health, the future of integrative medicine, and using technology to better serve patients, providers, and healthcare systems. Kirsten has been recognized as one of the top female startup founders to watch, the recipient of the Texas Trailblazer Award for her innovation in healthcare, and is also a HuffPost and Mind Body Green contributor. Now you know why I wanted to read it, because I would never have done
I feel
all
kind
that
of
justice.
shy now.
You should. I put on a red lighting, so I look red anyway. But I'm so Chris and I have known each other for quite a long time, and that connection happened probably through the ABRM and just spending time in Texas. I remember going to some southern barbecue places that I remember Stevie Ray Vaughan used to go to or something. And I've just always loved her energy, and I'm really excited to have a chance to chat today. So I'm going to turn it over, and I don't know where you're going to go, but maybe you can kind of give a Cole's note, since most of our viewers here will be acupuncturists. You could speak to kind of how you got started there, and maybe even some of your influences and your evolution through practice and into, my God, what we talked about the other day, your deals with Apple. And I'm so excited. So
Okay.
Square one, you were a small child and acupuncture helped you, or I don't know. Go ahead.
Well, actually, I was a linguistics professor at the University of Texas,
Okay.
and I had been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis when I was 19 years old. I couldn't walk. I was had a lumbar puncture that wouldn't close, and every hour or two, enough cerebral spinal fluid would leak out that I would pass out.
Wow. Okay.
And so I could start to feel it. It was like as if somebody was turning a dimmer switch and just and I'm like, oh, I'm going to pass out, because enough cerebral spinal fluid would leak out and it would start to de-equilibrialize. And so I would lay down, even I'd be teaching, I'd be like, hold on, I got to lay down. And I'd lay down and then it'd, equalize a little bit. And then I'd get back up and teach some more. I was sleeping in the bathrooms all day long. I was really sick. And somebody suggested, they said, you should go see an acupuncturist. And I was like, fuck that. Like, that's like going to a psychic, right? I mean, there's no way I was going to do that. But I'd already had surgery and, they're like, well, you don't have any other choices. You can't just keep laying down everywhere you go all through the rest of your life. Right. And then, so finally I went to go see who ultimately became one of my teachers. And, he basically came in and started feeling my pulses. I hid my chart, I hid my cane, and he started feeling my pulses. And I was a very bad first patient, just ugh. And he says, oh, you're so tired. And I was like, whatever, everybody's tired. And he keeps feeling my pulse. And he's like, oh, you cannot digest energy. You cannot digest food. And I was like, okay, I do have a lot of digestive problems. And he keeps feeling. And he says, you have muscle weakness? And I said, actually, I have multiple sclerosis. And he starts clapping, right? He's like, oh, that makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense. And I was like, what are you talking about? And so then he basically sort of, gives me the Chinese medicine talk. But what he told me was the beginning of where I got today. That's why this is important. He said, when you were born, your constitution was very strong. Right. And your disease was very weak. You were born with your disease. And he said, but you're like a hard worker. Here's the other hand. He's like, so you worked, and your constitution got weaker, and your disease got stronger and stronger. And he goes, and then when you turn 19, finally, your disease got stronger than your constitution. And now here you are today. And our job is to fix your constitution. And if we fix your constitution, then you should go into remission. And then that's what happened. And then I went to acupuncture class. I was like, holy crap, this is the bomb. Yeah. And what
was going through your mind, like, right when he said that? Like, did he hit something and you were like, he's onto something maybe? Or
it was just like an ancient Chinese secret moment, Spence, it was just like, well, it's like when you tell patients anything, when you explain why they're not getting pregnant or why they're sick, and they're like, oh, I get it, right. And so it's just that moment that I say, like when people's light bulb goes off. Right. I always ask acupuncturists that I'm working with, because I do a lot of consulting with acupuncturists, and acupuncturists have to do so many jobs, and it helps to reduce burnout if you can figure out what you like to do, right. Like where the juice is in clinical practice for you, and do more of that and delegate the rest, And so for me, the moment that I get the most juice seeing patients is that moment when I explain it and they go, oh, because they get hope in that moment. Right. That's the first time that they have hope that something can be different. And so that's mostly what was going on. I was like, I believed. I was like, okay, I think this guy knows what he's talking about. And I had been to a lot of fancy neurologists, and they were just trying to make me take drugs and, no long-term clinical trials. So I was like, I'm not testing any drugs. Like, right. Forget it, So then I went to acupuncture school. And while I was in acupuncture school, there was a brand new gynecology professor there from China who really didn't speak much English. And he spoke English, was very hard to understand. And having been a linguist and lived in Asia, I became his translator. And so I just stayed with him every day, and, just basically translated what he would say. And, in the end, I started noticing that the menstrual cycle tells you everything. Hallelujah. And that if you fix the menstrual cycle, everything gets better. Like, you cannot have a perfect menstrual cycle and still have any serious health problems. Like, if you keep looking at the menstrual cycle for the feedback system, and unlike anything else, it feeds back every single month. And so I just got more and more interested in that. And when I graduated from acupuncture college, there was hardly any reproductive acupuncturists in the whole country. And I just decided that, I'm going to be the fattest fuck in the country, And I just started, just being that. I always tell acupuncturists, whatever it is that you want to be for your practice, you have to declare it and start living into it. Right. Don't say, I'm going to be, just be it. Yeah. Right. And catch up with your vision, step in. Right. Mm-hmm. And so that's sort of what I did. And, then I studied a lot of Western medicine and really was into the Western medicine side of it for a long time. And, and then like I always struggled that, I mean, we had a really busy practice. We had 3 clinics in 3 cities, and we were taking care of several hundred patients a week, and fertility patients. And but I still struggle because it's expensive, right, to come to us. It's very cost prohibitive. And even though we did all kinds of things to try to make it more affordable for people, even if we gave it at half price, it'd still be cost prohibitive for most people. And so in 2013, I realized, I was at a conference, and there's 7 million women who can't get pregnant in the U.S. There are 100,000 IVF cycles for 7 million women, and there at that time only 1,000 board-certified reproductive endocrinologists. And I was like, I only helped 10,000 in 20 years.
Right.
This is not okay. And so I set out to try. I was like, I know how to help people very well, but I can't scale this in an affordable way, and I'm going to have to do something different. So I stopped seeing patients, and I read books for a whole year. I had no idea. I had no idea like how I wanted to help more people, and I was like so poor, right? And I was bitching about being poor all the time, and all my friends were like, "Well, if you just went back to work, you could be rich." And I was like, "No, I got to do something here. I got to do something here."
Scalability.
It wasn't even about, like, it was just like, how can I
help more people?
Help more people, yeah. And then I was in an online yoga class, and most people don't know this about me, but I'm very introverted, and I don't like classes of any sort. And like Lauren will never sit by me. Like we're at a thing, because he's like, please don't sit by me. Because I'm like talking and making problems and stuff. But
that student, is that your son you're talking about too, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so anyways, and in the class, the guy said, at the beginning of the class, he said, so I want you to think of where you're blocked. What's really blocking you in your life? And as you're doing the yoga today, as you're pushing up against the limits of your physical body and you're breathing into it, I want you to imagine that's like letting all the blockages go. And I was really starting to get freaked out. I'm like, I can't figure out how to solve this problem. I cannot figure out how to solve this problem. And in that flipping yoga class, like I stretched into something, and all of a sudden I was like, looked at the computer, and I was like, fucking technology. Of course that's how you do it.
Mm-hmm. The answer to everything.
Yes. So I pulled the smartest guy I knew, Rob Krasowski, from my team, another acupuncturist, doctorate, and I said, I can't do this by myself. Will you come build this with me? Cool. And we took 2 years to build the Conceivable platform. We took 800 questions that we would possibly ask somebody. We're basically teaching an algorithm to do exactly what we did in our clinic. Mm-hmm. We took 800 questions that we could potentially ask somebody in a consultation, right? We wrote them. Our whole office was whiteboard. Every surface, floor, ceilings, tables, walls, everything. So we wrote all the questions like, do you have insomnia? Yes, no, fall asleep, stay asleep, blah, 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 all over things. And then we systematically went through and said, if you say yes to this question,
what happens?
No, what else do you have to say yes to? Right? If you have night sweats, what else you will not have cervical discharge? Because we got, like as we were building, we limited ourselves to can we make a really good Chinese medicine diagnosis in 20 questions?
Okay.
20 questions plus basal body temperatures.
BBT, and that's a big piece. Okay. Mm-hmm.
And then that got us to Conceivable, and then we did a pilot. We built the technology. It's pretty fucking cool technology. Like they use the technology. It asks them the 20 questions. They start basal body temperature charting. They start collecting the questions you would ask during the phases of the menstrual cycle. Right. It prescribes. It makes a constitutional diagnosis. It prescribes herbs for each phase of the menstrual cycle. Customized formulas. It ships it to them, or if they're like in the U.S., like 300 clinics use our herbs. Right. And so if they're using our herbs, then their patients can just use the technology. It makes customized menu planning for each phase of the menstrual cycle. Nice. It then teaches them how to cook what's in the menus, because I feel like this is one of the problems why people don't cook, because they don't know how to cook. Right. It does customized behavior modification for them for each phase of the menstrual cycle. And then there's a whole stress curriculum. And
so
25... Go ahead.
There's a stress curriculum, like it kind kind of goes through, or can you touch on that a little bit? I'm curious.
Yeah. Yeah, that's going to be the main part of it in the next version too.
Okay.
So basically, the curriculum is basically a weekly course that they do that starts out around, like, I think that the most important things that women with infertility can do around managing their stress is learning mindfulness.
Right.
And so, but that's scary. Like all of those words, like we imagine the girl that we were building this technology lives in a podunk town who doesn't even ever eat brown bread, who's never doing yoga or meditation or mindfulness. It has to be like so neutralized. Right. So everybody, for anyone, right? Not just someone who's already into health.
Yeah. You're not preaching to the choir. You're, it's so easy to do that. And I'm glad that you stepped out of that. That's great.
Yeah. Well, I think that they need us just as badly as the people, if not more. Mm-hmm. And so really there's a book called One Small Step Will Change Your Life. Right. And that book was very pivotal for me because when I thought about how we were going to build the technology for Conceivable, we wanted to build very small steps over a longer period of time. So at the end of 12 or 24 weeks, they've just made tiny changes. But at the end of the 24 weeks, they've made huge changes.
Yeah,
so
that's beautiful. I mean, it's the exact same thing I say, because, if you make some sustainable small changes and change your trajectory just a little bit with time, you will be in a very different space, and that is not scary. Right, because so much, you can scare people or trigger them into what I call hyper wellness, where they're like stressed out because they're not making it to their yoga classes and to their cooking. Like it can cause stress itself, right? Yeah, because they then become neurotic about that. Right. Yes. Or they can't do it and they're stressed out about that, or they missed their meditation one morning because their alarm didn't go off and it throws them, or who knows what. I mean, it's just there's good for you. That's great. So the stress part, I'm excited. You said it's what's the website for this? Because people are right now probably going, what is she talking about? It's conceivables.com, right? Or
just conceivable.com. So we have two websites. One is for, so we provide software solutions for large companies. We provide Conceivable as employee benefit to large employers. We customize software for people who are completely outside of the fertility space. So that site is... Yeah, so kind of like what we were talking about the other day. Yeah. And so that is not, so Conceivable is not really we're not really consumer facing anymore, although like patients can definitely access and use the technology. But then we have for our professionals, so we have shop.conceivable.com that's our herb line.
Yeah. So you mentioned the herb line and how it is customized to within the algorithm to identify the patterns and properly prescribe and ship, and that's for women that are actively using the Conceivable app or software, right? And that is just everything that I've ever created stems from what I did in my clinical practice, and it sounds exactly the same for you. So these are, I remember many, many years ago when I got a tour of your clinic in Texas, or in Austin, and you had a huge herbal line in there, your tincture line. I think that was probably the genesis, or maybe it had already been going for a number of years. But so it all came from that, and you used in the clinical practice and what you found effective for dosing, for which, because you could choose how many formulas, for a few formulas for this or that, but this is all based on mostly from you and Rob's clinical experience.
Yeah, so, well, I had more than 26 associates over my whole clinical career, right? And smart people, really smart people. So every single one of them contributed in some ways to this line. Okay, the evolution of it's sort of interesting, though, because what happened was I was very serious about using raw herbs. Right. When I first graduated, and I only used raw herbs, and I thought that anybody who didn't use raw herbs was an idiot. I was very snobby in my younger years. Now I'm much more chilled. And but then we opened a satellite, and we didn't have room for a raw pharmacy in this clinic in San Antonio. what do you do? And so we were pulling raw formulas for like, 70 patients a week and shipping it to them for about a week. Right? Because then we're like, this is bullshit, right? We're not doing this. Also because it doesn't get there fast enough,
right.
And if you're next airing, it gets really expensive. Yeah. And I thought, well, we were writing hundreds of scripts a week. And I thought, well, the reality is that when I'm writing a raw formula, I'm using the foundations of classical formulas that I like.
Right.
So what if I took those foundations, the way that I like to use them, right? And I started building the modules of each one of those formulas.
Right.
So that now it's like granimals, right? Instead of writing a formula that's for yin deficiency and spleen qi deficiency by combining Jingui Shunqi Wan and Lu Zhenzitang, I've already got the blocks. And I've developed the formulas in a way that I know, my prescribing system, is based on like making a constitutional diagnosis and then breaking that up and applying it to each phase of the menstrual cycle.
Right.
So even if you have a very complicated diagnosis, if you break it up, there's only one or two things you're doing in each phase. Right. So then you're combining, you have two liquids, so you're taking a 1 or 2 ounce bottle and you're putting it's like 30% yin deficiency and 70% qi deficiency. Right. And then you're combining. And so we looked at the formulas over the last 20 years, like, one, what are the formulas that are most commonly combined? And then how do we actually really make them modules? Right. So that we're taking out where there's too much overlap, we're adding what needs to be harmonized so that when they meet, they're harmonized. And then we really sort of invented a new way to make tinctures, because all the what's called a tincture on the market right now are liquid extracts. Right. So that's a process where you take herbs and you put it in alcohol and you extract it after 2 ways. Mm-hmm. Our process takes now almost 2 months. Right. Okay. Right. So it's a decoction, glycerin, alcohol, water decoction process, right. And heat process. So you get something that's about 5 times stronger than anything you've ever used. Nice. So we like them a lot. They've been described as herbal brandy.
Herbal brandy? Oh, yeah.
That's what people say, yeah.
Is that your base alcohol?
No, that's what people say they taste like. When they taste them, they're like, kind of an herbal brandy.
Yeah, nice.
Patients go, this tastes like shit.
Yes.
No, it's still better than the extracts, though.
Well, yeah. I mean, my line is, if it tasted like strawberries, you'd think I was like full of shit. So here it is. Just take it.
Right.
I mean, if someone's motivated toward their goal, the taste of herbs is, I'm like, you got used to coffee and beer and they're bitter, so have at her. This won't be that different, and it's not for the rest of your life. So okay, so that's so cool how those two coordinate. So patients can actually access Conceivable, and say, someone watching has a fertility or sees some fertility patients, they can just send them straight to that site and it will walk them through everything that you're talking about, and then they will only need them for acupuncture after that, pretty much. Is that correct? Or
well, no. So if that person is using our herbs, right, then we give them a code to give their patients. It's like $199 a month if they're getting herbs, right? If we're prescribing and shipping herbs to them, they pay $199 for the service. But if the acupuncturist is using our herbs, then they get a code that their patient can use the software for $19 per month.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But the herbal prescribing still has to go through the practitioner, or do you?
Yeah. Because we don't want to infringe on the acupuncturist herb sales, right? That's not good for anybody. Right. And the truth is that still. Yeah. Well, just that, like, we want to protect our partners. We don't want to be saying nobody's going to want to use our software if we're stealing their herb business, Yeah, of course. And of course, most practitioners want the freedom to be able to do their prescribing on their own,
and at the very least oversee what. But if someone was rural and they had no acupuncturist around, it could be a complete system for them. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And then some of our coaches, people who are doing coaching in Canada, where we can't send herbs to Canada, but they have patients that they're working with in the US, then we can provide the herbs for them. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Yeah. Because as a Canadian, still, we have 30 million, you have 300. So, a lot of cross-border activity happens when you're a Canadian. There's just, there's no doubt about it. Okay, great. So that distilling process that you went through of the diagnostics, which I mean, I think everyone drinks the Kool-Aid going through Chinese medicine school, because it's like, wow, it's this complete system of looking at a human being and diagnosing them and fitting into patterns, and then there's treatment associated. It's like, so like we've all been there, but you've taken it clearly to the next level and created this AI, this machine learning AI that somehow uses, this is where we kind of cut off our call again, I'm so sorry, because I was so curious. This is where this AI is kind of, that you are patenting or have patented, uses or expand. I'm just fumbling, so expand.
Right. So currently there's no AI. It's sort of in the roadblock for that, but it does have the ability to learn.
Right.
Right. And so what happens is like the algorithm makes a diagnosis on the back end, and then it prescribes what it wants, just like what you would do, right? We prescribe, even in our clinics, we prescribe for the whole month, because if you're working at a constitutional level, you're not putting your fingers into the dikes to try to stop the bleeding, you know? Okay. And so then, as the algorithm continues to collect data, basal temperatures and cycle parameters and energy and stress and all that stuff, it's then looking for 20% improvement every single month across the board. Okay. And so if it's not, then the algorithm's going back and looking like, is that because the person wasn't engaging in the behaviors that they need to be doing in, or because the hypothesis was wrong? Right. And then modifies the diagnosis, the treatment plan, the deliverables, and all of that.
So there's a system of check-ins or feedback that the patient has to be giving in like the form of web forms somehow that they every week give feedback on or something?
Nope, just on their app. They just log into their app, they put their basal temperature in, and then it only asks them a few questions every single day. So if they're ovulating, it's asking, do you have cervical discharge? You know, have you had any middle schmerz? Whatever.
But it's really actively connecting with the patients like that. That's so great.
Yeah, and like what I really like best about the whole thing that people don't appreciate as much as I do, but so the basal body temperature, like, you know, I looked at 250,000 basal body temperature charts to come up with my theory about basal body temperature charting, right? And so I identified like this particular basal body temperature profile, right, where they're like in the low 97s in the follicular phase and the high 98.2-ish in the luteal phase. So we superimposed that onto the basal body temperature chart, so that the patient can see, like, how close are you to being in an ideal state? And what I always say is, like, we're looking for the average. So even if there's some sawtoothness, what you're looking is, like, is it averaging 97.2 in the first 14 days of the cycle? And so it actually tells them the average. Oh, wow. And if the temperatures are really high, just like if your patient came in and your temperatures are really high, you'd be giving advice about, like, making sure that you're hydrated, eat more pineapple, like, all, you know, your temperatures are a little bit too high, so make sure that you're doing things, drink hibiscus tea, whatever. And so every time they put in information, the feedback is the feedback that we would have given the patient. Right.
Because
so they
it is you. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. And so like TechCrunch said, like, it's like having a fertility, you know, expert in your back pocket, because you're getting to engage. And our patients in our clinic even really like it, because they're like, I feel like I'm with you you're with us every day, right, as opposed to once or twice a week. And it's also tracking, you know, how many hours of sleep they had, how many servings of vegetables they had, how many glasses of water they had, and if they took their herbs or not.
Nice.
So it's even telling them what herb got prescribed for them. So it shows them the bottle. Okay. Like, so, you know, it's like, you should be taking 2 dropperfuls 3 times a day of Unwind.
Right.
And it shows to you.
You should be needing a refill today.
Well, we send it to them.
Yeah, but just send it. Yeah, okay. So they, even if they're not, that was my next question is compliance. I mean, when they check off something like, oh, I didn't take my herbs, or you know, I didn't do X, Y, or Z, does it somehow encourage them, or is that a time where you guys can reach out, you're notified, or how is it? Yeah,
this is a completely Humanlist experience.
Yeah. Okay.
Only in the first version, like, it was very intentional, because we wanted to pilot, like, one of the things we were trying to suss out is, like, were the success rates in my clinic so good because, like, I'm just a schmoozer, right?
Yeah.
Like the human experience of being with me, or actually what we're doing. And so we wanted to make it a completely digital experience to see, like, will anything happen? Like, what are the results from that? And so definitely, like, if they're not tracking, it'll say, like, hey, tracking is really important. Or, the other thing is that we developed a predictive analytics tool accidentally inside the technology. So I always have this thing that I say that, you're not fertile or infertile. You're more or less fertile, and that you have a lot of control over that. Nice. If you think I'm fertile or infertile, it's like a death sentence, right? It's like having cancer. And so the algorithm is scoring all the time on the back end. And so to be able to know what to prescribe and things like that. Right. And so we thought, well, we'll visualize that score as your conceivable score.
So they can got a gamified, piece to it then. So their self-competitiveness is cultivated, right?
Well, a little bit. And also, more importantly, to see that, like, what you do or don't do is moving the needle every day in one direction or the other.
Nice.
And what we found in the pilot was so interesting is that we thought that, like, because I was like, I know that when people get to, like, what I call a conceivable cycle, they have a high likelihood of getting pregnant. Right. And so we thought 80 is the score that they would need to have to get to what we called a conceivable cycle. The average score of people who were diagnosed as infertile who did our program in the pilot was 33.
Okay. Yes.
But in 90 days, if they crossed over the threshold of 58, they started getting pregnant with very high velocity, and significantly higher in women over 35.
Really? So these adjustments you've found statistically through your data that you've collected have more effect on advanced maternal age.
Yeah, and so in fact they had a 357% increased likelihood of conception.
Wow.
Very significant. And go ahead.
No, that's so great. My question was the under 35s. I'm just curious as to your thoughts as to why. I mean, to me in my practice, they've always been women that are under 35 typically have been often more difficult patients for me to work with, and that seems backwards at first thought maybe, but I'm not sure exactly what it is, but do you have any comment on why or that trend? Or
I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think that's exactly right. I think that that the women over 35 are just having the result of stress and age, right. More than true pathology. Right. And I think that the younger women have, like, more serious cases of PCOS and endometriosis, and they're just harder cases. Like, they're having elevated FSH at 32. This is bad. Right. And yeah. And I think that truthfully, the over 35s, I don't think that we looked at this, but I think that the over 35s are probably the most compliant because they know, like, now or never.
I believe that. Well, that's also when they start looking at their alternatives, such as IVF, also showing statistics of less effectiveness, as each year passes by. Whereas when you're younger, you still have the immortality, maybe mentality, or you could just come out of your 20s, so you're bright and shiny. Yeah, for sure. I mean, we even had women in the 42s getting pregnant, which really surprised me because they happen occasionally in the clinic, but not that much. Right. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. That's a difficult piece, but awesome. So you've taken, because in clinic that human element is so huge. I mean, it is, just sometimes having that support, may be what someone needs on a weekly basis or whatever it is to have the strength and really hook into the why they're doing it every week, and to keep them going. And that may be the result, but you've removed that piece and still are seeing effect just in a pure algorithmic traditional Chinese medicine, ish model. That's so awesome. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
I'm surprised that only took 2 years, but it's ongoing now, right? Or where is it headed now?
Well, that was like the first version, like we just built, like they say, like your first version of your technology, you should be embarrassed by, because if you're not embarrassed by it, you built too much. Yeah. right? Because you just want to, well, you took too long, you spent too much money, because you're going to change it a lot, no matter what. You'll learn a lot, and then you're going to change it a lot. And that was really hard for me because I was going to be like introducing that to my peers.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and I didn't want to be like, hey, look at this piece of shit I built. So we probably spent too much and built too much on the front end. So what's been interesting is like, you know, there's this statement of fact in Chinese medicine, like the good doctor treats the patient, and the great doctor treats society, and the master makes herself obsolete. We talked about this yesterday, and I felt like I was getting to stage 2 when I built Conceivable, right? Because I like took myself out of it to be able to treat on a more societal level. But, you know, what we realized was that, one, consumers don't understand this. Like, the part that's very hard is that, like, I'm sure, like you, Spence, like, somebody comes into your clinic and has a consultation with you, they're going to be your patient. Like, probably 95% of people who walk through your door become your patient. And so we were really surprised that when we launched Conceivable, that I thought we were going to break the company, like, on the first day. Like, for $200 a month, you get me plus herbs plus, you know, like whatever. Yeah. And we didn't hardly sell any. Yeah. Because people didn't trust us. They're like, I've never heard that my menstrual cycle has anything to do with my fertility. I don't believe that an app can help me to get pregnant.
Right.
Like all these issues, you know. And so then we started reaching out to you know, larger organizations to help us sort of, you know, get our technology into more people's hands and help more people. We had a lot of pushback about supplements, about the herbs. Right. Insurance companies, hospitals, that, you know, they're like, this is too scary for us. Employers, even, that means it has to go through the medical director. Right. And so what our next version will do will be only software. Okay. Straight software, but we are exploring the application of using like our diagnostic technology and predictive analytics against, instead of using herbs as the intervention, developing intentional technology delivered placebo.
Oh, that, okay. Is this proprietary, or do you want to expand on that a little bit? Is it the mindful, like, is it more into that realm of people digging deeper in that piece, or
we have patents on almost everything, but not on this yet. But I mean, this is not going to be an easy thing. This is going to take me 5 years to figure out. So,
no pressure.
No, it's okay. I double dog dare somebody try to do this because, it's pretty hard. Yeah. And if somebody can do it, that's going to make a huge contribution anyway. So if somebody beats me to it, cool. The NIH did this really interesting study. They took a group of people and they put them in front of a computer screen in which they showed them a green light or a red light. Right. They also hooked them up to a machine that would shock them. Right. So either a very mild shock when they'd see the green light, 8 seconds, they'd get the light shock. They'd see the red light, 8 shock, they get a very bad shock. Like as bad as they could shock and get by IRB, right? Mm-hmm. And in one of the interview that I read about somebody who had done this, he's like, the shock was bad enough that you like kind of said, Jesus Christ, like bad. And then a few seconds later, you'd have like a foot reflex. Like, do you know what I mean? Okay. So it was significant. And they administered three sessions within 20 minutes of 12 shocks. So they got 36 shocks in 20 minutes. Okay. Shock. Yes. At the end of the thing, they asked the participants what their experience was. And they said in the first session, they had 1-to-1. Green was easy, red was hard. Second one seemed a little blurry. Sometimes green was a little bit worse than what they thought. And in the final one, almost all of them said, I think that I got green every single time. When in fact, they got red every single time. They conditioned, they used one flash of a red light to condition a person to dump enough dopamine in 8 seconds to protect them against a very significant trauma. Wow. And I'm going to build technology that does that. Nice. But with the paradigm borrowed from Chinese medicine. Right, okay. Right, so instead of just like trying to dump dopamine, right, can we cause a hormone cascade? Right. Lots of different things we can do.
Can we shut down the sympathetic nervous system to a point where they digest better, or their stress levels are lower? Awesome. Yeah. That's so cool. That's so cool.
with a wide variety of like pretty far out things. So we're in conversations with Apple and Accenture and some pharmaceutical companies. I know acupuncture is like boo pharmaceutical companies, but actually there's a couple of pharmaceutical companies that are actually doing really amazing technology R&D to try to really help women, and so this particular one would give us access to like unlimited resource dollars,
I am, that is so awesome. And on the pharmaceutical point, I grew up a pharmacist's son. And one thing you can rest assured with pharmaceutical corporations is they're always going to be trying to find something that works. It shouldn't matter if it's a pill. That's just easy delivery, and that was effective, cost effective mostly. But I mean, if you're looking at health and wellness industries and who's higher into the yearly dollar value, I think our wellness industry is quite strong, and for pharmaceutical companies not to be delving into anything or forming partnerships with people like you is inconceivable. So I'm kudos to you for being open. I fear sometimes in our the Kool-Aid we talked about at the start, the people in the acupuncture industry and Chinese medicine are such largely such amazing folk, rooted in such integrity and deep core values that they're as a healthcare practitioner supportive role amazing always, but it can be, drinking that Kool-Aid can be a little prohibitive when you're not open to, you don't have to be open, or become a naturopath, which I think so many people fall into, or functional styles or whatever it might be, but just being open to what's going to help your patient, and that being what you're going to recommend or educate yourself on, and I think that's way more doable when you're specialized like yourself, in the fertility or reproductive health. So that's awesome. Okay, so how can people learn more or get involved, or they can obviously use the Conceivable with their patients, but is there any call to action that you have for people, or even inspiration into how to kind of move into what you're, just the realm that you're in, the lane that you're in, because you're clearly in the fast lane, and it's HOV because you got a bus of people with you, versus being in the slower lane of like that monk-like clinical practice, and which is important as well, and if that's what you love, that's great. But for those that are aspiring to more, what kick-started this fire? I mean, you're awesome. I love you. And
Thank you.
And you're doing such great stuff, and that's important. And it's people like you that are pulling Chinese medicine into its new evolution. I mean, it's always evolved. It's always kept its core and its foundation, but it's always evolved. So there's, right, in my mind, absolutely everything right about that. But so what people or mentors or tips or ideas, or what gets you going? What fuels you?
Well, currently Placebo fuels me. Okay. It's all I can think about.
Okay. Awesome.
I'm obsessed with Placebo because, it's ironic because for so many years, from the Western medical community, they're like, oh, acupuncture is just placebo. And I was like, it is not placebo. It's real. It's a real thing. I'm like, fucking placebo is even better than any of it.
Yeah.
And how actually, even as a clinician, like I'm just in my clinic just a half a day a week, but how as a clinician can we infuse placebo, more of the placebo effect into our treatment? How do we potentiate that? Like, who cares? Like, all we want to do, if we really want to help people, then we'll do whatever we have to do to help people, right. And I think that, like, especially maybe younger clinicians, like there's a lot of ego associated with like our way is the right way and the traditional way. And like in my style of teaching, around constitutional diagnosis, it's very pared down. I learned that I had to pare it down to be able to teach an algorithm to do it. Right. And then I learned that it worked. Right. And so I think that, just continuing to stay curious is the most important thing, because as you know, like when we graduate, I'm sure you had the same thing, Spence, when we graduate, we think we learned a lot in 4 years, right? We're like, I know everything. And then like 5 years in, you're like, I know a little bit. And 10 years in, you're like, I don't really know anything. And now I've forgotten all the points, so I really don't know anything. One time Rob was at my office, and I was like, I think I have asthma or something. And I was like, what's a good point for asthma? And he's like, he said some point like kidney 21. And he looked at me, he goes, you don't know where that point is. And I was like, no idea. He was like, do you know if it's on the front or the back? And I'm like, zero idea,
Right.
But it's because, I think if you're looking to do something different, you have to really step out of your box. You have to step out of your clinic. You have to do different. Like there's this guy I like, Joe Dispenza, who talks about this. He's got this book, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. And he said to have a different outcome, you have to be a different person.
Right.
So you wake up in the morning and you brush your teeth, and then you put your pants on, and then you go downstairs and you push the coffee button, and you drink the same kind of coffee and the same kind of cream and their favorite cup, and then you drive the same way to work, and you see 20 patients, and you make $10,000, and then you go to the bank, and then you go to Hawaii, and you repeat and you repeat. And I'm a quintuple Virgo, so I can really get into that, And as long as you're doing that, you will get the exact same result, the good and the bad. And so, trying to do things differently. Shop at different places, like wear different clothes, listen to different music. Like my partner is an creative executive at Apple. And one of the things he does all the time is he listens to like new comedy, and he'll listen to like what's like really new music, like what the young people are listening to. And, like going to museums and doing things in nature. It seems very obvious. Yeah. If you don't expose yourself to and reading different kinds of books, like I'll just ask people like, what's the best book you read in the last year? And no matter what they say, I go and read it.
Nice. Yeah.
It's like, I don't care if I'm interested or not. Like, oh, this is about the Civil War. Who gives a shit? Like, I don't care. I don't want to read about a war book. But then, you just, something clicks. Right. And magic can happen. And like, for me, that's how it was with the placebo. Like I read that article about that NIH study, and I was like, it was like that same moment with Dr. Wu, like the light bulb. I'm like, I know what to do now. I know how to make myself completely obsolete. I know how to make Chinese medicine obsolete from this particular application of it, to get all the goodness of Chinese medicine, right? We're still using, like, it's deeply steeped in Chinese medicine, but the conventional deliveries of herbs and acupuncture in humans are gone.
Awesome. So getting out, being different, if you do want to grow, I'm a firm believer that you have to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. You have to.
Yes, that's good.
Right. You have to ride on that edge where you might fall, and then the other point you brought up that is so poetry. I love Tim Ferriss.
Me too.
He something he said in his Titan book was about keeping childhood curiosity or childlike curiosity, and listening to, like your partner, listening to what the kids are doing. And so I sit with my children and I encourage them. Often they ask these questions and you're just like, shut up. It's so ridiculous. But now I listen. I'm like, because they ask things that are right in front of our face that we've looked past as an adult, and it might be revolutionary.
Yeah.
But like my son saying, why can't I just ask Google a question when I'm walking down the sidewalk? I'm like, that is a good question. And that's probably going to be possible in your lifetime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's really true. I mean, I remember the first time I watched an adult movie with my kids. My son was a gymnast, and he was I don't know, 6 or 7. And the first time they had a show, when they did the cross tumbling, they played Rocky's music, Eye of the Tiger. Yeah. And he gets in the car and I was like, how was your warm up for your performance? And he's like, it was good. And he's like, I really like that music. And I was like, what music? Because I didn't see the warm up. He goes, the one that would go like this, duh, 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 duh.
Everyone knows it.
Right? And I was like, oh, Rocky. So I was like, we watch Rocky, right? Yeah. And the whole time, he will not stop asking questions. Why is Rocky talking that way? Why does Rocky look that way? Why is Rocky trying so hard? Why does he care so much? Is he going to lose to Apollo? And I was like, shut up! Watch the movie! Shh! But it's the same thing. Like their brains are just like, well, why is that? Why is that? Why is that? I mean, I've even started like really like trying to dress differently intentionally, like sometimes I wear my son's t-shirts, like, like just because people relate with you differently. Like I broke my back last year and I was in this very obnoxious.
Did? Oh, I know.
Oh,
remember.
yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I remember. You walking so well. So
Yeah, I'm good now, but I had to wear this brace that was like from, my chest all the way to, like below my pelvis. And it was white and it's like a Jason mask for your body.
Okay.
Right? So full of like straps and it was really interesting wearing it because people were flipped out.
Right.
Like you'd walk in somewhere and they'd be like, oh, you must have just gotten out of mental hospital or like something is really wrong with you. You know what I mean? And it's the same thing and you show up differently, and so, even just tiny things like go buy some new socks.
Yeah. Well, you're possibly, I don't know, thinking of, I'll speak for myself. I just moved from Vancouver where I've been for over 20 years and uprooted my family of 5 and moved to the Okanagan Valley in British Columbia. It's absolutely beautiful. It's lake
I've
country.
been there. It is beautiful.
Yeah. So I hope to see you soon too next year. But I had what I had to be most careful of. I believe is not transplanting, my microcosm from the old to the new, and being open to what is supposed to be here.
I like that.
And in the new space. So I'm that's been challenging though to undo programming, to not dress the same way, but those little tips you gave are brilliant. It just start with wearing a weird shirt or
like if you're a girl, buy a new lipstick, like I always wear brown lipstick. Yeah, get a new haircut or don't wear makeup for a week. I mean, I can speak of the girl things,
Yeah, those are I think that's great. I'm giving a talk tonight at a fertility clinic with some people, and I'm thank you for that piece. I'm gonna actionable items. Go home if you want to. I love the quote about if you have a goal, it's as much about the goal as it is about the person you need to become to achieve that goal.
Yes.
I love that. So that transformation is something when people come to my clinic, I'm like, no one can guarantee you that you'll get pregnant and have a baby, but I can guarantee you that if we connect and you take, the steps and we work together, and you persevere, that personal transformation is a guarantee.
Yeah.
And again, we talked about how big that can be and how scary that can be, but boiling it down to bottom line is we want to see change. Even if, we've worked together for a cycle and that next cycle isn't exactly, it's maybe feels like a step back. That's feedback. We're looking for change. That's good. We're seeing that your body moves and is ready to be guided, and so we want change, and change can happen, that trajectory thing, with just something as simple as I'm going to recommend them all get a different haircut or something tonight.
Yeah, or go start eating a kind of foreign food that you never ate before. Go eat Ethiopian food, or start eating on the floor, or change your bed cover. Or, I like it on your body, because it's all day long that you're just experiencing something different. Like if you always wear pants, buy a dress.
It really, it's funny because I teach people this mindful hand washing technique that I have. It's like add 4 seconds to washing your hands, be in that moment, feel the water, smile, and think of something you're grateful for, and then take a deep breath. It's that simple. Or I bought this thumb ring. A thumb ring, I don't know if you've ever worn one, but they're kind of awkward. And it's simply just a commitment to myself to remind myself to breathe. And something as simple as breathing, I think that's the best stress relieving technique on earth. But besides sleep, maybe. But I mean, that's great. Thank you for the reminder of the small things, and that, because sometimes I think maybe even young practitioners in the clinic think, oh, I've got to produce and create this big plan and make sure things have big shifts, and because I'm supposed to be a master that fixes people, and but I think those are fantastic places to start.
Yeah. Well, I think that seriously, I recommend every person who takes care of people to read that book. One Small Step Will Change Your Life, because it's just, it really helps you to see. The guy talks about, like, when you're asking to people to make behavior change, if it's too big and it scares them, you turn on the amygdala, which is the flight or fright part of the brain. And when someone is afraid, they don't have access to willpower or creativity or all the things that are necessary for behavior change. Right. And so he goes through these clinical examples where, like, this woman was super overweight, high cholesterol, blah, 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 single mom. And the guy's a psychologist. He's following doctors around to look at the interactions around behavior change. And the doctor says to the patient, "You're so overweight. You've got to lose weight. You've got to stop eating so much. You've got to go to the gym. You're gonna have a heart attack and be like orphan your children," right? And you can see the woman's is like, okay. And he's like, she's a single mom. She does not have time to be in the gym 4 times a week, right? She's poor. And the guy steps in front of her and he says, "Hey, do you have a TV?" And she says, "Yeah." And he goes, "Could you do something for me?" And she said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Just on one commercial per night, could you stand up next to your chair and march as fast as you can?" And she laughed. And he says, if they laugh, you know that the amygdala is not on, because there's nothing funny about dying. Yeah. And he said, so she comes the next week, she comes back and he goes, "How did it go?" And she goes, "I marched for 2.
Yeah, nice.
And he said, and what you gave her, and this is my favorite part of this book, and one of the just beautiful clinical moments is, he's like, what you gave her was the confidence that she can do something different. And every time you give her something that she can achieve, then it's like one more brick in her confidence, like, I can do this. Nice. I can do this. As opposed to when we give them, like, I used to give my patients a huge book of all kinds of shit. Well, and just like, get all the plastic out and blah, 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 blah. Right? And they'd be like apologizing all the time. Right. So then you're reinforcing the story called, you don't have time to do everything to take care of yourself. You're never going to get there.
Right. That's powerful. And that's good advice. I mean, even I send home, I always am like, I'm going to send you a bit of a Cadillac plan or recommendations, but I want you to come back to me next week and we will discuss what you feel you can do and is sustainable for you. Because but I like that explanation of it turning on, a portion of their brain that causes stress, and then of course they're going to have an aversion to doing anything, probably,
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, that's stressful, or yeah, okay, wow, good tips, great. We boiled it back down to some good clinical stuff. But so where can people? Okay, so conceivable.com, is there on a Facebook page probably that they could send people to, or YouTube or whatever? All Conceivable is the best spot.
Yeah, just go to, if you go to conceivable.com, that's where the blog is. The blog is super useful stuff to share. We do have a Facebook page. It's not that active, really. Mostly, if people are interested on the shop.conceivable.com page, if they go to the resources, there are a ton of my courses for free that they can watch. If you send me an email, I forgot to make a code for this webinar, but if the person if somebody's watching and they want to order a starter pack and try our herbs, they get a box that has each of our 12 formulas, 8 ounces with 100 bottles for dispensing. They get me for an hour of training, and all for $799. But they will do $100 off for your podcast listeners. And all they have to do is email me, Kirsten@conceivable.com, and say, hey, I saw you on Spence's podcast, and I'll discount you back. What they get, though, is for $799, they get $2,500 worth of herbs.
Wow. Okay.
So it's practically at cost for us. We know that 70% of the people who start using our herb system continue to use it, right? Because it's got a 5-year shelf life. Right. It's completely hypoallergenic. Right. It's about 5 times stronger than anything else on the market. It tastes good. It's very portable. People typically love it.
Nice. Okay, I'll get that information from you, and we'll put it succinctly in the show notes as well, and however we promo it onto the social world, and I will for sure be giving links wherever I go, just straight to conceivable as well.com as well.
Sure.
I would continue chatting, but we should just maybe come up with another topic for another.
We can do it. We can do a part 2.
Yeah, part 2, and on beingfertileprogram.com. We will, as soon as that's up, I will be podcasting on there too. So that will be very similar but different. So I'm so excited for that, because I think what you've developed is so awesome. It's so
Thank
awesome.
you.
But anyway, I will let you get back to creating, and I will get editing down this video so it can get out to the world. Thank you so much.
Only cut what you said, not what I said.
Yeah, okay.
Just kidding. Oh, just one other thing. So while Conceivable is the name of our company, and we launched as a women's health herb company, we do have a sister brand called Viv Wellness.
Oh, yeah, right.
And that's our line of herbs that are for practitioners who are not focus on fertility. Right. The truth is they're the exact same formulas, because they're constitutional formulas. They're not fertility formulas, but people don't want to use formulas called Conceivable. And so if you go to the Conceivable, shop.conceivable.com, you will still get access to Viv Wellness. Okay. If you order either one, you're still going to get the same formulas. Okay. And I also do consulting, so practice consulting and personal consulting, so people can email me too for that.
That is so awesome. Yes, you would be a valuable resource for so many. Thanks again. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I will let you know as soon as this is ready. And thank you all for watching. Get a hold of Kirsten. If you've got any further questions, you can also post them online. And we'll see you again soon.
Okay. Happy holidays, everybody.
All right, dear.
Thanks. Bye-bye.